Welcome back to the Power of Coffee, and this is the 100th page, okay? So we know that Betty is gone. Lamley, her daughter, who works as a nurse in Canada, is also gone. Now let's see what happens. What happens with the coffee shop? What happens with Martha? What happens with all the characters involved? Let's continue the story. So we are where we are with Martha and Belinda now. Martha is in Belinda's house. She's just told her that Lamley is dead, and Belinda went outside to wash her face, and she came back. So let's continue from there. Does your mother know about this? She suddenly said, and I softly replied, no. Don't tell her. She casually said, I won't. She sat quiet for about 10 minutes before saying, Betty has no relatives. Lamley was the only one she had. Now that you're both gone, there's nothing left. She continued. What are we going to do? How do we get Lamley here? I gently said. After some minutes, Belinda looked at me and then gently smiled and took in a deep breath. That was the big question. I left Belinda's place within an hour. We ended the talk with her saying that she would inform the others, Selassie and Anne. I was thinking about something, the lawyer who would help us in the FDA case. I thought she could help us get Lamley home, but Belinda told me not to tell anyone, so I couldn't do so. As the coffee house was near her place, I stopped by and gazed a minute at it, standing a stone's throw away. It was shut, and there was no one around, no one coming over to eat. Was this the end of it? I pondered. I got back home to learn that Ma'am had been trying to contact Betty on the phone. She had called many times already, and obviously no one could answer it. So she asked me if Betty was all right, since I claimed to have seen her yesterday. I suggested that she might be out of town, say the marketplace, and she reasoned that it could be so. I suggested that she might be out in town, say the marketplace, and she reasoned that it could be so. I hurried to check the phone in the closet. It was still there, resting under some of the clothes that couldn't get hanged for lack of hangers. I picked it up and then cleared the call log, but saved the number that called from the hospital. Subsequently, I sat on the floor and leaned against the wardrobe, pondering over the words of the hospital administrator. I wanted to know more about Lamley's case, about the accident. Was it a car accident or something else? I thought of the possibilities. A car accident seemed most plausible. The hospital could help us get Lamley home, I thought, and decided to call up the administrator. I got into the wardrobe for the phone, and then Mother came in. Immediately, I dropped it and came out into the open. She came to call me to the kitchen in order that I ate something. Quickly to regain weight. I followed her out of there and dished up a plate. However, Mom didn't leave me alone. She wanted to know the truth about Betty, since she wasn't convinced that she was out at the marketplace or in town. She believed that there was something wrong. Perhaps she had taken ill, and I didn't want her to know. As I calmly told her my version of the truth, Dad came in. He had a ceramic cap in hand, which he filled up with water from the dispenser. He had a ceramic cap in hand, which he filled up with water from the dispenser. He drank it right there, and subsequently asked about my well-being. I cheerfully replied that I was well, and then inquired about his wealth, or inquired of his wealth. Dad was 70, tall and fit. He had a fair brown complexion. He had a brown complexion, unlike Mother, who was light-skinned. Beside the usual fatigues that came with old age, he was all right medically. And thankfully, so was Mother. Dad had been an athlete during his senior high school days, sprinting over long distances. But today it was only a promenade through the compound, and sometimes in the neighborhood. He commended me for asking about his health and gave thanks to God for the way he felt. Subsequently, he turned to walk away, and then Mom stopped him, asking if he had heard from Betty. He replied in the negative and asked if something was wrong. Then she looked at me and asked for the truth. He replied in the negative and asked if something was wrong. Then she looked at me and asked for the truth. She was serious, her face and her tone, but I couldn't tell her that Betty was no more. I reasoned that even if they went to her place, they would find it locked up, and then assume that she went somewhere, and then give up on it. There was no way they were going to find out the truth, even if they pursued it, since the only ones who could help them were in no mood to talk. Consequently, I told them to check on her at home. Dad remarked that it was a good idea, and that they would do so later during the weekend. But Mom couldn't wait. She wanted to see her right away. She went over to her room to change her clothes. And then left to see her. Father wasn't happy with it, and he asked me to accompany her. I obeyed and swiftly followed. When she saw me following her, she briefly stopped and then asked me to go back. I ran up to her, screaming that it was Dad's request. Consequently, she backed down and we both went to Betty's place. It was quiet, as suspected, though she called out and knocked on the door several times, making me feel guilty. After about 5 minutes of continuous knocking and calling, she stopped and glanced around for help. There was no one around, no one visibly walking about in the immediate space. As it was a work day, the neighbors were out, and that allayed my fears that someone might know something. Mother decided to wait until she showed up. That's Betty. She sat on the bench which was permanently placed on the veranda, and I sat by, maintaining some distance between us. The breeze was soothing against the heat of the sun, and it made me want to stretch out over the bench. The feeling of guilt was still present, but I reckoned that it was for the best that I keep mute for now. My mother is a naturally emotional person. She could mourn over tragedies that occurred in movies, talking about them days after. How was she going to react to this? My focus shifted to the hospital administrator and the full story of Lamley's accident. I thought of calling her up when I got home. Moreover, I planned to ask for her help in getting Lamley to us. So the woman just vanished into thin air. Is that it? Mother said momentarily, in a quiet and pensive tone, and I took in some silent breath. Maybe she traveled, I said in a composed tone. A composed and casual tone. There's no network reception in the villages. There's no network reception in the villages, so she probably won't receive your calls, I added. Mom was quiet, but the words were sinking in. All right, maybe she's traveled as you said. We'll just call her later, she remarked after some moment, and subsequently stood up. She remarked after some moment and subsequently stood up, and then we left for home. We took a taxi to escape the sun, but got down on the way for cheaper transport, the bus, which always took time to show up. After a nice little shower, I took some food and then dialed at the hospital administrator. But after 5 continuous calls, no one picked it up. Then I thought of the time zone. We were in a different time zone compared to Canada, and that might be the reason why I couldn't reach her. I had to call within her time, not the GMT. For the rest of the day and the days afterward, no one talked about Betty. Mother went about her daily cooking and little cleaning exercises round the yard, sometimes singing a tune, while Dad took his promenades within and outside the compound. I got a call from Belinda 2 days ago to come over to her house, and I did. There I met Anne and Selassie, and all three were dressed in black. Belinda informed me of the date they had set for Betty's funeral. It was in a week's time. Now I could share the news of her demise with my parents. What of Lumley? I gently asked after some minutes. The three looked up at me, and Belinda gently nodded, confirming the essence of the question. That was the other reason why I was called. She wanted to find out if I knew anyone who could help them access her. I responded that there was a lawyer, Madeleine Boyson, who had helped us with a case involving the FDA. Lumley told me about her on the day she got the test results from the FDA. She mentioned that she was a friend and a lawyer, and the one who got the FDA to speed up with the investigation. But I didn't know where to find her. However, I told them that I was going to find out. When I left the place, I went straight home and then Googled up Madeleine's name, plus her profession, along with the name of the capital city. I scrolled through the results and picked up a suitable one, which fortunately had an address. Okay, so at this point, Martha has been informed about the funeral of Betty, okay? Her three friends, that's Selassie, Anne, and Belinda, have set a date for her funeral. And now they need her help in getting Lumley's body, that is her daughter's body, Betty's daughter's body, down from Canada. So Betty has decided to contact Madeleine Boyson, who is the lawyer who helped them get their coffee shop back into running, okay? After Alfred, that man who came to the coffee shop to take an early breakfast, after he had reported them for contaminated food, Madeleine Boyson is the one who was able to resolve the case for them. So Martha has gone to see if she could find Madeleine, and she's Googled up her name, and she's come by her address, okay? Her office address. So that's where we are now in the story, The Power of Coffee. Okay. I scrolled through the results and picked up a suitable one, which fortunately had an address. Yet I couldn't go that day because the day was half gone. At least I had a phone number which I called. It rang until it ended, and then it automatically redialed. Per the call settings. It rang until it ended, and then it automatically redialed per the call settings. After the second ring, it was answered. After the second ring, it was answered, and I quickly voiced a hello. She introduced herself as an attorney, and then I spoke. I stated my name and then mentioned that I was a friend of Lamley. I stated my name and then mentioned that I was a friend of Lamley. All right. So Martha told Madeline that she was a friend of Lamley. Okay. The moment she had the name, she sounded excited, and then asked me how she was. I responded in the positive, and then told her that I had a message for her concerning Lamley. Okay, what is it? Is there a problem? She said with faint suspicion. No, I just need to see you. I have a little case and she told me you could help me. I said in an uneven tone. She was silent for about a minute before replying. All right, Martha. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. I ended the call. I placed the phone on the table and then sat on the floor and leaned against the door of the closet. My head ached. I was tired of having to keep quiet, tired of having to break the news, and tired of being in this life. I shut my eyes. It was relaxing. It felt so comfortable. The floor had always been. I shut my eyes. It was relaxing. I could sleep and even dream. I felt at peace. Gradually, I drifted into sleep and stretched out on the floor. It felt so comfortable. The floor has always been my preferred place to lie down, ever since I was a child. Now it felt like therapy for the mind. I drowned in sleep, undisturbed by anything or anyone. The next day I was up early, around 7 o'clock. I had a shower, took breakfast, and then wore something casual but appropriate for a formal meeting. I told Mother I was visiting a friend and would be back in no time. Who was that friend that I had to leave the house so early for? She had asked, and I pondered over a suitable response. She's just a friend from school, that's all, I replied in a casual tone. She stared at me, at my appearance. I was casually dressed, didn't have any makeup on since I don't wear makeup. I wore a small black wig over my plaited hair, just to look businesslike, and the dress wasn't for outing. It was lovely, but not an evening gown. I was okay, simple and decent. Okay, you can go, but be back before 12, she said after the inspection. I smiled because I wanted to say something. That I couldn't be back before 12 due to traffic. However, I didn't. I just walked out quietly and went my way. I left the house at 8 a.m. and got to Madeline's place around 10 a.m. There were a few people waiting at the reception and I joined them. But after about 10 minutes, I called her up and told her that I was in. She asked me to wait, and after nearly an hour, we were alone in her office. My first words were, "Good morning," and she responded likewise. I work with Lamley's mother, Betty, I said afterward. and then Madeline nodded. I work with Lamley's mother, Betty, I said afterward, and then Madeline nodded. So, how may I help you? She said. Madam, there's something you need to know. I began, speaking in a low tone. She stared at me and then broke the silence. Did something happen to her? I nodded and then softly spoke the word to confirm it. Yes. She was quiet, close to 5 minutes. I decided not to speak. Let her ask the questions and I give the answers. That will make it easier for me. Is she alright? She softly said, and I gently shook my head without looking at her. Madeline got up after that. She walked to the windows which had shutters over them and then stood there for some time, and out of the blue she broke the news herself. Is she dead? Is that it? Just tell me straight away. She sounded a little angry, staring at me. Yes, she is. That was all I could say. Madeline continued to stare at me, taking in the news. After a few minutes, she strolled towards me and then, looking at me, remarked, Who told you this? How did you find out? I looked up at her and then replied that it was a hospital administrator. Her eyes lit up at that, as she wanted to know more. She sat down and asked about this hospital administrator. She wanted to know her name and how much she said about Lamley's incident. I stated her name and then recounted what she had told me about the incidents. Madeline shook her head, unsatisfied with the information. Madeline shook her head, unsatisfied with the information. Subsequently, she asked for the number that the hospital administrator had called on, and I told her that it was home on Betty's phone. She asked me to text it to her once I got home, and subsequently, I left the place. It was hard to believe that her friend was gone, and in order to clear her doubt, she decided to contact her via social media. She sent her a message on the popular social media platform, WhatsApp, and waited for a response, Usually, the reply was immediate. It was hard to believe that her friend was gone, and in order to clear her doubt, she decided to contact her via social media. She sent her a message on the popular social media platform, WhatsApp, and waited for a response. Usually, the reply was immediate if she wasn't too busy. She kept the phone by her as she sat on the floor in her room. 10 minutes passed, and then the next, and that's when she knew that it was true. She was quiet, thinking about her. What they said happened to her, but she couldn't believe it. Suddenly, she picked up the phone and opened the WhatsApp platform, and then checked Lamley's contact. It had a phone number, and she copied it down on a paper and then dialed it up. It was the same number from Betty's phone. It rang till it ended, unanswered. She tried again, and it went the same way, and then she tried for the last time, and they got picked up, but no one spoke. Hello? She backed into the receiver. Hello? She backed into the receiver, standing up from the floor. She began to pace about for better reception. Moments afterward, a female voice sounded at the other end. Hello, St. James Specialist Hospital. I'm Ruby Mal speaking on Lumley's phone. Who am I talking to? Whom am I talking to, please? Madeleine was quiet for about a minute before responding with her name and her relationship to Lumley. Okay, so after Martha has told Madeleine about Lumley's death, she tried to contact her on WhatsApp, but she got no response. Then she called up a number she found on Lumley's WhatsApp page. That would be Lumley's number, but this time it got answered by someone, a woman named Ruby Miles. Okay, so that's where we are now. Hello. She backed into the receiver, standing up from the floor. She began to pace about for better reception. Moments afterward, a female voice sounded at the other end. Hello, St. James Specialist Hospital. I'm Ruby Miles, speaking on Lumley's phone. Whom am I talking to, please? Madeleine was quiet for about a minute before responding with her name and her relationship to Lumley. Hello, I'm Madeleine Boyson. I'm Lumley's friend, she said. And before she uttered another word, the woman replied, All right, it's good you called. We need you to come for her. Once again, Madeleine went mute for some moment, okay? Her eyes were already full, and she occasionally dried them up with her blouse. Now she was away from the phone as she sucked up the water through her nostrils. Hello, Ruby called when she seemed to be gone for too long. Hello, I'm here. Sorry, Madeleine promptly responded. Okay, so this marks the end of the 100th page of the story, The Power of Coffee. The story about Martha, who is a university graduate without a job, but she gets one at a coffee shop. And then the owner of the coffee shop, Betty, suddenly dies and Martha takes over the place. We learn from all the 5 videos so far, or the recent videos so far, that Lumley, Betty's daughter, has also died back in Canada, where she works as a nurse. So that is where we are in the story now. And now Martha has gone to see Madeleine Boyson, who is Betty's and Lumley's friend, okay? And she needs her help to get Lumley's body home for burial. So that is where we are in the story now, The Power of Coffee. This is the end of the 100th page of the story. Next time I'll be back with the next 10 pages, okay? The next 10 pages of the story. That is the 110th page of the story. So join me next time for the next 10 pages of the story, The Power of Coffee. Bye for now.